It's Wednesday, August 14th, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On today's show, it's another Water Wednesday. We explore the wonderful world of raising oysters, take a trip to the county water testing lab, and learn more about financing sewer expansion and treatment. Now for a look at municipal and legislative notes. After a few weeks of packed Cape Flyer trains coming to Cape Cod, capacity has been expanded. Another bi-level train car was added at the request of the Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority to provide more seats and space for passengers, along with another bathroom. Tom Cahill believes the addition of the Bourne stop on the south side of the canal has led to the increased ridership. The Cape Flyer weekend train service runs between Boston South Station and Hyannis, with stops in Braintree, Brockton, Middleborough, Wareham, Buzzards Bay, and Bourne. In partnership with the Massachusetts Oyster Project in the town of Barnstable, Barnstable Clean Water Coalition built and installed an oyster upweller tank at the Gateway Marina on Hyannis Harbor during the summer of 2018. The goal of the partnership is twofold: to raise oysters from seed size to juvenile size in the upweller using water pumped from the harbor, and to demonstrate that oysters improve water quality and clarity by filtering out nutrients and sediment. We trekked on down to the harbor to learn more.
We call it the Hyannis Upweller Project, and the partners are our organization, Barnstable Clean Water Coalition, the Massachusetts Oyster Project, and the town of Barnstable. And the project is, we're trying to grow oysters here from tiny little seed up to about 1 inch in length. And the idea is we grow the oysters in the tank, and one of the things that they're doing is we're taking water directly out of Hyannis Harbor. It's being pumped up into the upweller, comes up through these sorting buckets that the oysters are put in. The oysters are filtering out plankton, they're filtering out detritus, they're filtering out nutrients, so they're not only getting food and growing while they're in the tank, they're improving water quality, they're pulling out nutrients like nitrogen, and then they're also clearing up the water. They improve the water clarity by removing the sediment and the detritus. And then that clean water is going back down into the harbor, and it's showing that oysters can grow in many different types of conditions of water, whether it's water that looks dirty, whether it's really dirty or not, and sending out the clean water. And then once they grow to about 1 inch, we're taking the oysters out of the tank and we're putting them into town waters. With the town of Barnstable, we're working with Department of Natural Resources and the shellfish technicians. They're taking those oysters and then they're planting them out in our first batch. When we did the program last year, went into Cotuit Bay, and more than likely our oysters from this year are going to go out into that same area, and that's going to allow the oysters to grow until they're of harvestable size, which is 3 inches. And at that point, people in the town of Barnstable who have recreational shellfish licenses can come and harvest those oysters when they're mature and ready.
Basically, the oysters are helping to remove excess nutrients from the water, and a buildup of nutrients, if it's not regulated, can lead to something called eutrophication, and that can lead to things like harmful algal blooms, which pretty much, in the short term of it, they just kill off like huge populations of fish and marine inverts and things like that, and they're really bad for the overall marine ecosystem. So making sure that those nutrients stay in check is really important for keeping marine ecosystems healthy.
When we were trying to figure out where could we put an upweller tank in the town, we thought, where's a highly visible area where we can talk to people, show them what we're doing. So we talked to the town of Barnstable, and we thought Hyannis Harbor would be a great place. There's a lot of foot traffic down here. It's a highly visible area. So we talked with them, and they said that we could put it here at what's called Gateway Marina on Hyannis Harbor. And so they're providing with us basically the property. And we have the tank here, and then the other part of the partnership is, what do we do with the oysters when they're big enough to go out into the wild? And that's the part of working with Natural Resources and the shellfish technicians, because they have a very large shellfish propagation program in the town of Barnstable. And so we're trying to help them contribute to that by giving them roughly 60,000 oysters last year. This year we're trying to double that, give them 120,000 oysters, and again help propagate shellfish in the town of Barnstable to help benefit the local economy.
The way the upweller works is that it gives them constant water flow, and I'm down here cleaning 5 days a week, and the days that I'm not here, sometimes we have other people, so they get cleaned all the time, so they have no sediment on them, basically, most of the time. So that just increases the water flow and makes sure that it's constant, and that's why they can grow so well. In the wild, they can do this on their own. They're getting that flow from like tides and things like that, but they're sitting in this sediment. The tides aren't necessarily moving very fast, so they grow just a lot slower. So in the wild, an oyster grows at about 1 inch per year, so it'd take them 3 years to get to a harvestable size. And when we start them in the upweller, it takes them only about like 1.5 years to 2 years maximum.
I think what we want to keep improving it. We want to keep hopefully even doing some more oysters next year. What would be good is if we have to try and quantify, you know, how many oysters are going in when they're 1 inch, how many are surviving over the winter, and then how many are reaching that harvestable age, and can try and look at that and try and factor how much nitrogen are all these oysters contributing to removing from the system.
People should care about clean water because it takes up almost all of our planet, and the health of our oceans is really the health of the earth. And if we don't take care of that, then you're really not taking care of our long-term selves.
How do you know if the water you drink or swim in is safe from pathogens or high levels of bacteria? The Barnstable County Water Test Lab samples area beaches weekly. Channel 18 took a tour of the lab to learn more.
This is our bacteriology lab. I run the beach sampling program here, but we also do a lot of water quality testing for Cape Cod, the residents of Cape Cod. We also do water departments. They are required to do routine monthly testing, and they bring all of their samples here. We do it for several of the towns, the town water departments here in Cape Cod. So at the beaches, we're testing for enterococci in marine water and E. coli in fresh water. And these bacteria are not necessarily harmful in and of themselves. They're called indicator organisms, which means that they could be indicative of more harmful pathogens in the water. And the reason that we test for these and not for those other organisms, Giardia, Cryptosporidium, the big bad ones that you've heard about, is because it's cheaper and easier to isolate out these bacteria and grow them and count them here. So they're nice because usually when they're present, they're associated with other more harmful pathogens. So those are the two, and those are, we're required to test for those organisms in the Massachusetts Bathing Beach regulations. So we do those analyses, and then if there is a level that exceeds the state limit, then we report that information to the towns. Most of the beaches get tested every week. Some of the beaches have variances, which means they get tested monthly. This has been approved by the state because the beach has 2 years or more of clean data. They haven't had any exceedances. If they do have an exceedance during their monthly testing, then they have to resume their weekly testing. But most of the beaches we do weekly testing for them. So Charlotte, she's one of our beach samplers. She is currently working on one of our membrane filtration stations. We have 4 of them. That's how we do our testing for enterococci, E. coli. We also do total coliform, fecal coliform. These are routine organisms that we routinely use to check water quality in surface water and also drinking water. So basically the way it works is Charlotte's measuring out samples from a sample cup, and she pours it into the funnel. You can see there are 6 glass funnels there. And then she has all of her samples, and then also on the bench she has her media, which we use to culture the bacteria. She's measuring out the samples. Everything's aseptic, so she's not very careful not to contaminate anything. She's pouring the water into the funnel, and then underneath the funnel there's a filter, a piece of filter paper, and underneath that there's what we call a stem, which has little pore spaces in it, and all of this is connected to a vacuum pump that sucks the water down through the filter and through the stem, and then anything that's in the sample remains on that little piece of filter paper. And then we carefully remove the filter paper, put it on the culture media, and it goes in the incubator for 24 hours. And that's what you see over there. Those are our 3 incubators. We also have water baths, a couple of water baths. The bacteria have different incubation requirements. And so those are some of the bulk of the equipment that we have here: membrane filtration, incubators, water baths. We also use microscopes to read the plates, to count the bacteria. And we've got a little bit of that going on over here behind us. So yeah, that's, and we make all of our medias and everything here, so that's why you see, we're cluttered but organized.
Right.
So we do usually the samplers go out into the towns. We split the Cape up into regions. Each town gets sampled on a different day. And we know within 24 hours of the time, from the time that the sample is analyzed, whether or not there's going to be an issue. And once we know that, we notify the health agent in the town that the beach is in immediately. Now, according to the regulations, the beaches, unless they have a history of repeated exceedances, the beaches don't have to be closed unless there are 2 consecutive exceedances. So if there's one, if we analyze a sample and it comes back with a level higher than the state limit, then we automatically go out and take a retest that day. And then if that retest fails, then the beach has to be closed. But since Cape Cod has such excellent water quality, these instances are actually few and far between. The beach sampling program, if people don't know about it already, it's a great service. It's a good way of knowing that the water that you're swimming in is safe, especially if you're here on vacation and you've got little kids and you're worried about them. Our website, www.barnstablecounty.health.org, we post every day to the website the results, and it's just pass fail, so it's really easy to look at. Residents can go on there and see if their favorite beach is passing for the week. What day was the test taken? Did it pass? Did it fail? And so that's a really good resource that we have. Also, I would urge residents to look for those signs. We have posting signs at the beaches, or the towns post them. And you want to look for those and make sure you're aware of the water quality at the beach. But it's a great service. These samplers that you see working here are out every day, most of the morning into the afternoon, battling bad weather, tides, and I think it's a great service to the residents of Barnstable County.
The draft plan for comprehensive wastewater program is on the Town Council agenda this week, and the final plan is scheduled to be delivered to the state by this fall. We take a deep dive with Finance Director Mark Milne on how the town is allocating resources and equity for sewer and alternative solutions. Comprehensive wastewater management plan, it's actually starting to come together. With me today, Mark Milne, Director of Finance. That's the big question out there. We know some of the work that has to be done, sewering, there's some alternative things that we're also doing that are taking care of some of the wastewater issues and challenges that the town faces, but we're almost ready to start.
Yes, a couple weeks ago, the council approved the first big project as part of this plan, and that was the $8.5 million to put in some sewer lines and a pump station along the same route that Vineyard Wind's taking to put in their cabling, and so that presented an opportunity for us to get into the road at the same time that they're going to be in, which will save us close to $3 million of project cost since the road's going to be open. So yeah, we're hitting the ground. The shovels will be in the ground in the near future, and as we go forward, there'll be a lot of financial decisions to be made.
All right. So the plan will be filed with the state late summer, early fall. That's got to be done first, is to do that. And then you talk about opportunities and inputs that you're looking at. The plan calls for 60 years. What really is the town going to focus on? That first 20 years?
Yeah, we're focusing on the first 20 years right now, trying to project out what's going to happen with changes in technology and where costs are going to go, like construction, inflationary costs on construction, and things like that. It's an exercise that's probably not worth spending a lot of time on. So we're trying to focus on the first 20 years and what we can reasonably project over that period of time. So as part of that plan that needs to be submitted this fall, we have to include a section that provides information on how we're going to finance this. And we've been accumulating resources for this in anticipation of this day coming. As you know, we have a special revenue fund that we've established, which we dedicate all of our local meals tax. We dedicate a third of our rooms tax. We have the short-term rental tax kicking in as of July 1st. We don't know what that's going to generate yet. And we also have the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund, which will just be starting as well as July 1st. So we have a number of financial resources that we've identified, and that's going to help us with kind of similar to what the State Revolving Loan Fund does. We're going to use this as a working capital kind of fund that will provide us some, allow us to carry the cost of some of the debt service associated with some of these construction projects until things like assessments come in and the rooms taxes come in, and helps pay that debt service back that we issue to fund the construction costs.
Right. And you mentioned the Vineyard Wind project. We've done a number of segments on Vineyard Wind where we know that they're going to open up the roads, and by being able to lay our pipe at the same time, people don't understand that that's a cost right off the front. That $3 million is a significant savings.
Yeah, yes, it is. And you really, once you go into a road like that, you don't want to open it back up for a number of years.
Right.
And so, yeah, as we go through this plan, there'll be other opportunities, hopefully, like that. We'll be able to get in at the same time as other utilities, and which will provide savings along throughout this program if we can identify those opportunities.
Right. So what do you have for other inputs? I mean, you've mentioned some of the funds that would be available through local rooms tax and things like that, but directly related to the resident, what's in the horizon for us?
Well, there's a lot of things we have to take into consideration when trying to determine what the cost of the homeowner is going to be in this plan. For example, as I mentioned earlier, where are construction costs going to go? Are those going to continue to climb, as we've seen over the last few years with an improving economy? Where is innovative technology going to bring us? And will that allow us to implement alternative solutions as opposed to putting pipe in the ground, for example, saving us cost potentially in that area. We're a housing choice community, which allows us to borrow from the State Revolving Loan Fund at 1.5%.
Wow.
And so where, of all of our project costs that we submit to them, going to be approved at that 1.5%, or will we have to go and issue general obligation bonds in the market, which will carry a higher interest rate? We have to think about that and try to project where that's going to go. What is the sewer assessment that we're going to charge in property owners as we begin putting sewers in front of homes? And what are the connection costs associated with those? And how are those connection costs going to be paid? There's a lot of different things that we have to consider. We don't have all the answers to them today, but these are all part of our planning that we're putting together that final plan that will be submitted in the fall. We're working on that over the summer. And so yeah, there's a lot of different things to consider. We can't, like I say, just tell everybody it's going to cost X amount of dollars for your
Right.
project, because some projects are going to be more expensive than others. They're going to be harder to get to the homeowners in certain areas. They're going to be longer pipes that have to be put into certain neighborhoods, which is going to cost more money. The more pipe, the more money usually. And so there's a lot of different considerations that we have to think about. But if we can come up with a plan that kind of makes it somewhat predictable as to what somebody can estimate, that ultimately is what it's going to cost them. That's ultimately our goal, to make it somewhat predictable, understanding that there's a lot of different inputs that could change those numbers, and so we have to have some flexibility as well.
Right, and you don't really have that, whether it's assessment or betterment at this point, because you don't have the costs or the neighborhoods really, you know, who's going first. And then there's also some partnerships out there as well, which may help the town gain federal dollars if we were out at the base, or some of the, you know, joining forces with another town may allow us to defray some of those costs.
Yeah, it may allow us to become available, or opportunities for grants, especially from the federal government. With you know, they keep talking about implementing a comprehensive infrastructure improvement program across the country, and you know, if that happens, potentially with partnerships with other communities, making partnerships with other communities, make a grant application much stronger in the eyes of granting agencies like that. And so if we can come up with those agreements, perhaps some federal dollars could come our way to help with some of the cost of this program.
All right. And as you project out, we've talked about bond ratings and things like that over time, and you've talked about debt service. What does that kind of do to your 5-year plans and things like that? I know you've been planning for some of this, but now you're projecting a 20-year plan. How does that fit into that type of planning?
Well, this is a plan that is completely separate to our 5-year financial forecast, but but then what we'll do is we'll fold this into that 5-year financial forecast. But we have the plan that we're working on is not to impact the current general fund operating budget, unless a decision is made that this program, this comprehensive water management program, we should provide some kind of property tax contribution towards this program, under the theory that everyone benefits from clean water or cleaner water. And so if that decision is made, then yes, it will potentially impact the operating budget, could potentially impact the tax levy, the tax rate. For example, if we were to increase the tax rate by 10 cents, which would be about $1.4 million on a tax levy, that could go a long way to providing some working capital for this program and reduce assessments to property owners who are involved in this program. But that means everybody in town is paying something towards this program. And whether or not that is something that our community is willing to accept remains to be seen. So, but we have to have those conversations.
Right. And how do you want residents to kind of become involved in this process? I don't want to say that, you know, we've kicked the can down the road. We've not. We've done a lot of work, but the resident now really starts to become aware. When you start talking dollars, residents, their eyes open, their ears open, and they're really, you know, how do they start to grasp what's happening?
I think when the plan is filed with the DEP and that becomes available, that'll provide a lot of information for residents to understand what's going on. And when the shovels hit the ground, I think they'll become more involved as well. Right now, it's kind of, well, yeah, we know what's out there, but you know, there's not a lot of construction going on. But with this Vineyard Wind project coming up, we'll start seeing that. And I think more conversation will take place when those shovels hit the ground.
Right. Is there any question I didn't ask that you want to answer?
No. No, we just you know, like I said before, we need to provide some, we need to understand that this plan's evolving, and it's going to change from year to year, at least the financing side of things and the technical side of things as well. Those, you know, technology improves over time. And especially, you know, inflationary costs and the bond market and all of those things impact what this thing is going to cost us down the road. So we have to understand that we can't provide the community a X number of dollars is going to be your contribution to this program, because there's too many unknowns to do that. But what we can do is provide a framework that we're going to work within to provide the community that information as to what their estimated contribution could be under this program. So flexibility is going to be key, and understanding what it takes to put a program like this together. It's a long-range plan, so nobody can put those long-range plans in stone and say, this is it, this is what it's going to be. So that's what we're striving to develop, something along those lines.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Mark.
You bet. Yeah, thank you.
Up next, things to do, places to go, and people to meet. The 29th Annual West Barnstable Village Festival will be held this Saturday on August 17th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. with a rain date for Sunday, August 18th. Dunk tank, face painting, garden and flower show, crafters and vendors, white elephant, garden talks, live music, and much more. Events will be held at the West Barnstable Community Building, the Weldon Memorial Library, Railroad Station, and the Meeting House Farm. Additional parking at West Parish with free shuttle service. Complete schedule of events, www.westbarnstable.org. Here is a look at the no meeting schedule. Comments, suggestions, accolades, connect with us on Facebook, email us, or send us an old-fashioned note by carrier pigeon. Channel 18 works for you. I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.